All right. Live. Good. Testing, testing, testing. Testing, testing, testing. Whatever you vividly imagine, ardently desires, and testing, testing, testing. Whatever you vividly imagine, ardently desire, sincerely believe, and enthusiastically act upon must inevitably come to pass. I think I'm okay. I'm not sure though, but you know, we'll see. I'm a man, yes I am, and I can't stop loving you. Do, do, do. Do, 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 do. All right, looks like we are back. Danny's back. Hello, Danny. Can you hear me? You should be able to. Do 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 do. All right. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what happened there. That could have been my interface. Not sure, but that didn't fully explain it. Now it's telling me that I'm not on screen, even though clearly I am. Oh Lord. So this is just one of those nights. But anyway, let's get back to it. Danny, I'm inviting you back up. There you go. It's starting to stutter again. Can you hear me? Now I can hear you. No? Try that again. Can you hear me, Danny? Wait, oh, wait, hold on. Okay, now I should be able to hear you. Uh, Say again? Not really. It yeah, can you hear me? Okay. Yes, I can. Okay. So yeah, I this is a part of it. This is a TikTok thing. I don't know why the screen is jumpy. Um, yeah, because it's funny because I set this all up before I went on. Everything was working perfectly, and then suddenly, all hell broke loose. But this has happened before where I tested. Like one time, I rerouted my audio just to play around with the routing, and I recorded it. Everything was fine. Everything worked perfectly. And everybody heard me perfectly until you came up as a guest, and then suddenly the audio went to shit. So I think a lot of this is so TikTok basically just has problems with this software. Studio is very convenient for the way that I like to go live. Um, just because uh, I like the use of a good microphone. I like to be able to do certain things. There I am frozen on the screen again. And but I don't I don't like I don't like how buggy it is. And Josh King says no. Yeah, I mean if you don't need studio, then there's no reason to use it. Yeah. Hey Alex, thank you very much. There's not that much fancy stuff. There's really not that much difference between studio and and using your phone. Like I could attach my my hardware, my audio hardware to the phone. There's a way to do that. The thing that I don't like about the phone is that in order to interact with the live, with the guests, bring guests up, reply, reply to comments and all that stuff, I have to constantly be touching the phone while I'm filming myself. So it makes the phone jump around and, it's just, I don't like that. But, you know, other than that, there's not that much difference. So anyway, so I don't know if you heard the song that I was playing earlier. I'm a Man by the Spencer, yeah, the Spencer Davis Group. I'm sure that's familiar to you. That song's like 50 years old at least. Yeah. So, yeah. So, there's the jitters again for no reason. Um, so, and well, you know what I bet is going on? What's doing the jitters is that I got a couple of warnings from my antivirus program that some weird web threats were happening, which that's a rare warning. I've almost never seen that. So I might have to just clean out my computer a little bit and uh, and help it along because it seems like studio is a very delicate environment and can't have can't have too many disruptions. But anyway, let's get the party started right. All right, for starters, oh, right. So for starters, my my subject is a question. Um, one person answered it so far. So are men better than women? Josh King said, no, we are equally the same, which is not true. Men and women are not equally the same. They're literally designed differently. Um, now, if you're talking about equal under the law, of course, we need to be equal under the law. We need to be equal under the government. We are not equal there either, unfortunately. But what's your take on it, Danny? Are men better than women? Of course you could. Of course you could. Any man could. Of course they could. If that was part of our design, then of course we could do it. Well, let's take the law. Let's take the law and government out of it. Just as a species, you know, let's run through a couple of the things that you said. I mean, in general, because of course there's always exceptions to literally everything. So in general, men are stronger and faster than women are, right? Which is a big deal because uh, that forms a lot of the division of labor between men and women, right? In our tribal days, it made sense for men to go hunt, and I bet you, the weak men stayed back, and the strong women probably joined the hunt. They were strong enough to support the hunt. They probably went because I think it was just based on ability. But we know that in general, men are stronger and faster than women. Um, we know, for instance, that men stay fertile their entire lives, and women start to experience infertility at 35 years old. And certainly by the time they get into their 50s or early 60s, they usually have no more eggs to produce, right? So that's an interesting perspective. And the question is that better? Is being stronger and faster better necessarily? Is being able to reproduce for your whole life better than having an expiration to your ability to reproduce? Because it always, it always strikes me as something interesting where when the subject of men and women come up, pretty much the go-to is, well, women can have babies. And people say that, and I don't think there's any agenda behind it, but people say that as if men are not involved with women having babies. They can't just have babies in a vacuum. They literally need men in order to have babies. And I think it's amazing that they are the temporary housing for a fetus. And I think it's amazing that once the child is born, they can feed the child with their own body. Now, that to me makes that's something that women do better than men can do because men can't feed children with substance that comes out of their body. Only women can do that. So that might be considered a category where women are better. This is a purely intellectual conversation. And it's really just tossing around ideas. And Torda Pounder says, "Wow, Uncle Phil from Timu, but you said that in all caps, so please stop typing in all caps. There's no reason for that. The Uncle Phil thing is so played out. Over 1,000 people have called me that, so it's just not funny anymore." Um, and I guess the Timu references that I'm not as good as the real Uncle Phil. So whatever gets you through the night, man. Um, so anyway, what do you think of the last few things that I said? No, well, but that's I didn't and remember what I said up front. These are general statements. Generally speaking, men stay fertile their entire life. You think most women are faster than men? Okay, no, no, but we can't go with exceptions. When we're speaking in generalities, we have to cover the widest swath of information. And generally speaking, if you look at the fastest men in the world, their times are faster than the fastest women in the world. And on average, men are faster than women. Even with marathons, men run marathons faster than women run marathons. So whether it's sprints or marathons, men lead in that. When it comes to the physical side of things, men are generally stronger and faster than women. This is not controversial in the slightest. Um, Bear Turtle says nearly any task related to dealing with children, women lead. They do lead, but they don't always do a good job. If you look at the statistics for who winds up in prison and who winds up addicted to substances and who has the highest cases of depression and things like that, it is the children of single mothers. So when you say lead, I don't know what that means exactly, Bear Turtle. Maybe you want to come up and tell me what you mean by that. Like to discuss it? I have no agenda on this conversation. I just want to have a conversation. But it's unfortunate that Jessica didn't make it back, but Jones is here, and we can get Jones in on the conversation. We'll see if he'll be brave and tell the truth of what he thinks. How you doing, Jones? And thank you for the heart me, by the way. Hmm. Hmm. And you think that that's changed now? How about now? How about 2026? How about now? Right. Yeah. So now when you acknowledge that and of course to remind everybody we're talking about generalities and averages. There are exceptions to all of this. But generally speaking, all of the things you mentioned and the stuff that I was talking about earlier, that men stay fertile for their whole life and women's fertility ends, usually by midlife, are these things considered better? Or are men better than women because of these things? That doesn't answer my question. That doesn't answer my question. That doesn't answer my question. Let's get back to my question. Are men better because of those things? Mm. When women date, when women date men, they engage naturally in hypergamy, and it makes perfect sense. And it's a very smart survival strategy. And what they're looking for is men that have more than what they have. They look for men that are taller than them. They look for men that are stronger than them. They look for men that have more resources than them. And these days, more resources means more money, right? So If every woman is dating up, right? If every woman is dating up, then by definition, every man who dates a woman is dating down, generally speaking. Does that make sense? Danny, what do you think? Does what that idea of women dating up, meaning that men automatically must be dating down? What do you think about that? So, so we've established that in general, men are stronger and faster than women. Men do the most dangerous jobs, the most physical jobs, and that includes building everything, maintaining everything, protecting everything, right? Because we haven't talked about the armed forces, but that's majority men. And even when there are women in the armed forces, they generally take administrative roles rather than combat roles, generally. Um, so why are we afraid to say that this all equals men being better than women? That's okay. Women have no problem saying that all men are garbage and all men are predators and all men can leave the planet. I've seen these comments every day. Okay, so they have no problem with that. But I don't even care. I don't need to consider any of that in order to look for the truth. But I find it interesting, and this is obviously a side note to the main discussion, but I find it interesting that we can list out so many things that clearly make men better than women, but still be afraid to say that men are better than women if we conclude that they are. Like it's funny, like we'll talk about dating and how women date up, right? Oh, I want a man who is taller than me. I want a man who's stronger than me. I want a man to protect me. I want a man to provide for me. I want a man who makes more money, but somehow we're equal, because I think people kind of conflate social equality and legal equality and species equality, and I'm basically taking out all the extraneous and just talking about the species part. And as a species, it seems like for the most part, men are better than women. Perhaps. What do you think, Jonesy? Yeah, and I love how he finishes that sentence, right? He says it's a man's world, but it wouldn't mean nothing without a woman or a girl, right? Right? Could right, right. Division of labor, man. Division of labor. Like the fact that women produce the substance that will feed a child and keep it alive is amazing. Okay. But when a woman is feeding a child, she's vulnerable. So she needs a man's protection in order to ride out that vulnerability. Women with children are more vulnerable than women without children. And, so men have taken it upon themselves in general to construct a society where women and children are safe, which is why when there's an emergency, the phrase is not men and children first, it's women and children first, right? So and of course, American society is dysfunctional, as I've said many times. The treatment of women here is, even though for the most part, there's been a big effort to bring women up to a certain level that's equal with men. Obviously, they failed at that in a couple of critical areas, but there are no barriers anymore to jobs except the jobs that require a certain level of strength, and even some men can't do those jobs, right? So that's just a standard for people's safety. Because if a firefighter can't lift a certain amount, that means he might not be able to save someone's life, right? So this isn't a function of some conspiracy to keep women down. It's actually a function of just trying to make sense of the job that needs to get done. If you're going to be hauling garbage or drilling for oil or constructing buildings or anything like that, then there has to be a standard to make sure that that work can get done. And again, some men can't meet that standard. So if women can't meet that standard in general, then it makes sense that they're not into these jobs. But, women don't even want the hard jobs, quite frankly. Women want executive jobs. That's what they're mostly looking for. Um, but there's some realities that have to be acknowledged. And I just always wonder why it's hard for people to acknowledge these realities. Why? Mhm. Yeah, I mean, look what happened in Ukraine. Yeah, look what happened in Ukraine when that conflict broke out. First thing that they did, okay, women, you get to go. All the men have to stay behind. Okay, that's not equal. That's not equal at all. But it's a reality check, and I know that we're supposed to use words so carefully as to never offend anybody's feelings, but the facts are the facts. And like, if I say the sun rises in the east, nobody gets upset by that. So if I say in general men are stronger than women, why does anybody get upset by that? It makes no fucking sense. They're both just facts. Why are you fighting? Because men start wars. I don't know what to tell you. Okay. And no women support wars, huh? Do you know that when women are leaders, there's still war? And very often those women started the war. Just search out history. As a matter of fact, female leaders have started 27% more conflicts than men have. But that's an inconvenient statistic, isn't it? Because we just want to believe that men are the problem in all areas of life. We just need to believe that men are always the aggressors and men are always in the wrong. This is the common thread in American culture, that men are just wrong, right? Um, like domestic stuff. Do you know when there's two-way aggression, it's 50-50? 50% of it is instigated by men, 50% instigated by women. When aggression is one way, let's say in a marriage or a couple, when aggression is one way, 70% of the time that aggression is started by the woman. But that's not the narrative, is it? Right? I've gone to sites, I've gone to organizations that represent women for these numbers. Yeah, I've heard women say that over and over again. Name a source. Okay, hold that thought. Hold that thought. So, mine wants me to name a source. RAIN, RAINN.org. That's an organization that is the premier organization that protects women. You can find all these statistics there. And Facile something says divisive, ambiguous question. I know you want to shut down conversation because only one narrative is the narrative that we're supposed to listen to. But if you actually have any kind of intellect or intellectual curiosity, you're open to conversation. We're literally just throwing around ideas here. So for you to call it a divisive question or divisive question, which is what I prefer to say, then that just shows your lack of intellect. The grand majority of countries led by women, especially in modern time, are exceeding expectations. Okay, what are those expectations? Um, what statistics am I citing that says women are more of a harm to men? I didn't say that. I never once said that women are more of a harm to men. So it would help if you understood the words that I'm saying, okay? Rather than just being reactionary and making shit up. Danny, you've been here the whole time. Have you once heard me say that women are more of a harm to men than men are to women? But somehow someone else imagined that and wants to hold me responsible for their imagination. He or she, I don't even know what that's what's going on there. I can't. Yeah, they don't even have a real photo. Um, but the statistics on marriages or relationships are pretty interesting. The DV, domestic rhymes with violins. Um, they they're not what's commonly reported. The narrative is a very stark difference to the reality. And again, I made sure that I used only statistics from organizations run by women for women, because I didn't want anybody accusing me of using skewed statistics. And again, the best one, the biggest, most established organization when it comes to protecting women is RAINN, RAINN.org. Yeah, they're a phenomenal organization. I wish they weren't necessary, but they are. You know, so Beth is here. Hello, Beth. Welcome. Patriarchal, structural led countries are destroying the earth as we speak. Well, that's because most countries on earth are have a patriarchal structure. And by the way, most mammals on earth, except for six or seven, have a patriarchal structure as well. So patriarchal structure is common. So that doesn't necessarily mean anything. And if you look at history, it doesn't matter whether a country is led by a man or woman. All the conflicts that happen still happen. And that was a female, I think she's a sociologist, or no, she's a historian, and she focuses on sociology. And she did her PhD work around female leaders throughout history, and wound up doing a TED talk and having, a very controversial take. Character matters. It is true. Although it's very interesting, you never hear the phrase "a woman of her word." I wonder why that is. Well, chivalry to me, chivalry is such a very specific thing because the literal term, I know the meaning has changed, and that's very common with meanings. They transmogrify over time, but chivalry was literally about knights and their behavior. Okay, how they conducted themselves in public, and the idea of chivalry when it came to men and women, again, based on what we know, that the average man is stronger and faster than the average woman, and we know that women look to men to protect them, then chivalry was partly about how men treated women, especially knights, how knights treated women. Today's idea of chivalry is a very watered down version of that. It's opening doors and pulling out chairs and shit like that. But, the overarching sentiment is still there. That's why there's still women and children first in an emergency. So that concept of chivalry is still very much in effect. Does that make sense? Well, that's a different that see that what you're describing, I think, is the transformation of the woman's movement. So let me stick with me while I lay this out. It's quick, but I think it's necessary to say. The original woman's movement was absolutely necessary because women couldn't vote, even though women generally didn't want to vote. The vast majority of women had no interest in voting, but the suffragettes, I forget how to pronounce that, but the suffragettes wanted the vote, right? And they campaigned for the right for women to vote. And eventually, after asking for a long time and protesting, and to their credit, they were very consistent and they did this for decades. And, finally, in 1920, it was passed and then reiterated by the Supreme Court 2 years later. But women still didn't have equality because they couldn't own property, they couldn't get a bank account, they couldn't have a credit card, all those things. But by 1974 or so, all of those things were addressed in the court, right? Um, and so, you know, the movement that got women equal representation under the law was absolutely necessary. But what happened after that has been a malignant version of that. because the attitude that you just described is the attitude that comes from women thinking that men are garbage and freely expressing it online. As a matter of fact, on the U-shaped tube, if a man goes on and says women are garbage and they shouldn't be in the world, his channel will get shut down. But women's channels can say the opposite all day long. They can say men are garbage and they shouldn't even be alive. They shouldn't even be on Earth. They're useless. Like Ana Navarro, a woman who I used to be in love with. All right, she's on the View for a while. I don't know if she's still there. I never watched that show, but she she was when she was I think this was a few years ago. I don't know exactly when it was, but this subject came up about men and women, and she was like, "Oh, men are useless. Men are useless." She is in a studio built by men, in a company run by men, a broadcast company run by men. Most of the people in the crew that work the cameras and the audio, they're men also. And she probably, and I know she has a husband and maybe she has sons or nephews or whatever, but she was willing to say publicly on a big television show, men are useless. That's disgusting to me, right? But nobody bats an eye when a woman talks like that. And that's I think that the last 50 years of feminism is, I think, responsible for that. It okay, LED, it doesn't matter that it wasn't the government stopping women from getting bank accounts. The fact is the government fixed that. Okay? It was happening. That's what's important, not who was doing it to them. It's so divisive to say, hold on. So So yeah, I mean, do you do you does my point make sense, Jones, in terms of like the way feminism was before and the women's movement was before, as opposed to how it is now? Yeah. Hmm. Hold on a second. Shit. I just realized that there's one piece of audio that I didn't fix, and that's not here. That's from my other platform. Da-da-da, da-da-da, da-da-da. There it is. Okay. All right. Nobody on the other platform heard what you guys were saying, but hopefully that's fixed now. Anyway, um, yeah, I think the turning point for feminism was the mid '70s when they had accomplished everything that they needed to accomplish. I mean, there were actually a series of laws in terms of hiring and work equality and work safety for women and all these other things that kind of came into effect. And um the there was nothing else for the movement to do that was, I would say, immediate. There weren't any big immediate problems. Of course, and of course society um you know doesn't change overnight when a law is instituted. So it's not like laws can change people's hearts and minds. um but what's going on there? um but When they got to like the end of the '70s, early '80s, they started getting less donations because people had the sense that like, oh, okay, I think we, for the most part, had a mission accomplished kind of thing. Like, okay, we tackled the big stuff. And the women's movement at that time pivoted from equality for women in society and under the law to men stink. Men are the enemy. Boy, there's some fucking weird buzzing sound happening right now. What the fuck is going on here? Okay. So Danny, say something, please.
Testing 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay, you're clear there. I don't know why I had some weird buzzing on the line. It sounded like it was. Anyway, so Jones, does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, and any big movement, like when you do something that big, and it was a huge thing, it was a positive thing, you got to let it settle. You know, I mean, I understand you want to go further and further, but if you gain 1,000 miles and then you want another 1,000, you got to remember how you got to that 1,000 miles.
Yeah, but that's hard because think about it. A lot of the women that started receiving this kind of messaging were not even like born when all this stuff was happening. Like if you were a woman born in 1985, you didn't have the benefit of seeing the original changes. Those were just stories that you heard. You know what I'm saying? So like your point is valid, but that in reality, I think that's a hard thing to accomplish. It's like there are, if you handed a rotary phone to a 20-year-old, they wouldn't even know what the fuck it was. Right? They've never seen that. Hand a 20-year-old a cassette tape. They don't know what the fuck that is. You know, if you hand them a CD, they think it's going to be a fucking coaster. Yep. Right? So it's all relative based on, you know, how much of the history that you know. And, you know, one of the things that I have an issue with millennials is that they all act like history started 10 years ago, you know? But that's another story altogether. All right, we got lots of comments.
Just send them my way. I'll give them a little education. Jonesy, how are you?
I'm doing okay.
If you don't mind, if you don't mind, I'll go on with dealing with some of the comments. But Tate, someone's referring to Andrew Tate. Yeah, Tate. You have to remember a couple of things about Andrew Tate. The main thing is that he's an entertainer, right? He's an influencer. So I don't even think Tate believes a lot of the shit that he says, but you know, because Tate, he has this mix of stuff that's very benignly true, just like the stuff that I said. On average, men are stronger and faster than women. That's a benign truth. That's just a reality. But he mixes it in with some controversial shit, and it's hard to figure out with Tate, because he's a really good actor. It's hard to figure out what he really believes what he really believes in and what he doesn't. A lot of the stuff he says, I think, is absolutely ridiculous. And I wouldn't listen to his content regularly. As a matter of fact, I haven't listened to his content in probably 5 years. And even when I did, I just got a feeling for him and then I moved on. I never watched his shows and really took in his content because he's just part of that whole red pill movement. That's a bunch of frustrated guys that are like angry at women, and you know they're not getting laid, so they're pissed off and they're blaming women for their problems. And it's a very childish movement. And guess what? Almost all of the people in Dump's administration are acolytes of that movement because Curtis Yarvin is the guy that started all that red pill bullshit, and he speaks very radically about men and women and in a very childish way. And those guys believe it. That's Charlie Kirk was one of those guys. J.D. Vance is one of those guys. Um, um, Peter Thiel is one of those guys. These are guys that are very weird when it comes to women.
So, do you think Tate is kind of like Colbert when he first came out? Like he's
No,
mocking it to the point where it's like
no,
ridicule?
no. I think, and there's no way of knowing. I don't know the dude, but uh, Stephen Colbert created a character, and he never came out of that character. But for anyone with half a fucking brain, we understood it was a character, right? The Republicans didn't. Tate, I don't think he's ever created that kind of avatar. I think he's always represented himself as himself. And again, I don't know where the lines are or if there are any lines. This could be my imagination. It could be completely my imagination. Tate might totally believe everything he says. I'm not sure. I'm not sure because he just doesn't seem like an honest person. So I don't know if he's telling the truth or not. You don't
The
think
only
Tate
thing
is
I
a red
find
pill
about him
person? That's
hypocrite. I'm sorry.
insane. Tate is a fucking banner for a red pill guy. Like, what are you saying? He embodies everything from the red pill community. Like he's considered one of the kings of the red pill movement. What were we saying, Jones?
Oh, but about Tate, to me, the big hypocrisy is his mother raised him. The father wasn't there most of the time because he was very loose with that relationship. Like he left the kids behind too. The mother had to stay and raise him. And he
Yeah, I
he like
mean,
attacks her, and I'm like, that upsets me. Is either, single parent, if the person is raising you doing their best, understand they're trying to take care of you.
that doesn't mean they're doing a good job.
Oh, no, doesn't mean they're doing a good job all the time, but understand that, like, you're put in a situation which you don't think you should be in the first place. I mean, you didn't plan on.
Yeah, I understand both sides of that equation, but I don't accept as an excuse I was doing my best. I believe that for the most part, most people always do their best, but that doesn't mean that they were doing a good job. They could be doing their best. It's just like the person who comes in last in the Olympics, they were doing their best too, right? So, I have no idea what that dude's story is as far as the interaction with his mother. She could have been a terrible mother, and maybe she was a great mother, and he's just a weirdo. Because I think the red pill movement is a weird movement. I think it's men who are weak, who don't want to take responsibility for bettering themselves, so they're blaming women for their problems.
Could it also be a reactive thing of hyperfeminism?
It could be, but it's an overreaction.
Oh, no, I know that because, like, look at Rush Limbaugh and all that, the famous Fema Shotzi line. It's like they literally made women into the enemy.
But yeah, again, that's very common for the red pill. I don't think Limbaugh was officially part of the red pill movement, but he had very regressive ideas in general. So, and again, these people that are in entertainment, I take everything with a grain of salt because it's hard to know what's real and what's not.
Hey,
Hello, Corey. How you doing?
good, good.
What's on your mind, sir?
Well, just what you got going on up there about is a man better than a woman? No, absolutely not. Like, I kind of got in here a little bit late. I don't know if I know all of the commentary and everything that's going on or anything like that, but no, they're there's not one man out there better than any woman out there. Everybody is who they are. Like, I know very strong women, you know, like
Mm-hmm.
my wife, very strong woman. If it wasn't for her, it'd be a big part of I wouldn't be who I am today if it wasn't for the strong woman that I have standing out there next to me.
Okay. All right. So let's play around with this. And I just want to, you weren't here in the beginning, so I just want to say I have no agenda. This is a conversation, right? So nobody's right, nobody's wrong. We're just throwing around ideas. Is that okay with you?
Oh yeah, absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely.
So are men in general, on average, faster and stronger than women?
Depends where you're coming
Nope.
from.
Nope. Doesn't depend. On average, are men generally stronger and faster than women?
I'll say no.
Okay, so you're not engaging in the truth then.
Am I
When you look
stronger
at
than every woman I've ever met?
when you look at that's not what I said. I said specifically on average and in general. So when you look at statistics for, let's say, who lifts the most weight, let's say at the Olympics, are women lifting more than men on average?
No.
No, they're not. In sprints, are women running faster than men on average?
That's a tough one.
No, it isn't. It's the same answer. It's no. In marathons, are women running marathons faster than men?
No.
No. So uh, it's pretty obvious from empirical data gathered for the entirety of the human race is that men are generally stronger and faster than women. Okay.
Okay,
And
let me turn a little question to you. Can you read faster than the women next to you?
I don't know. That has nothing to do with strength.
That's a strength in my eye. Um, are you able to
Oh,
do
look,
math
dude,
as fast
dude,
as the women around you?
dude. We. I'm trying to engage in like real, tangible conversation about this subject. You know, we're
Just physical strength.
so right. That's what I'm asking you, right? So at first you said no, that men are not stronger and faster than women. Are you still at that same position?
It depends the position in which you're willing to look at it.
Okay, fair enough. Well, thanks for coming up. Appreciate your time. Oh Lord. This is what I mean. It's like and I get where he's coming from. He's not a bad dude. He's actually a good dude. He's trying not to say anything offensive, but I need the truth. I need the truth. There's some things that are empirically true. The sun rises in the east. That's empirically true. That's not controversial. Okay? And men are generally faster and stronger than women are. This is an empirical truth. And Dr. Joshua says something interesting. Both male and female have advantages over the other, and that's a good thing. I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. All right. Well, mine asks two questions. So, where does that train of thought end? Okay, men are stronger and faster. So, why does that matter? It matters because who builds societies? Who has built civilizations? Who has invented almost everything around you, right? Because remember, there are women online as we speak saying that men are useless and shouldn't be on planet Earth, right? So I'm here examining that and examining that idea. And I posed it in a question to get your attention. But like the attitude that I'm seeing in American society is a very negative attitude. Oh, good. Mine is coming up. Excellent. And I'd like to see a more equitable attitude um, when it comes to this conversation. Hello, mine. How you doing?
Good, thank you. And you?
I'm good. What's on your mind?
So like when I wanted to hear what you were talking about in terms of, like the stronger, faster. I mean, like, yes, if in terms of just agreeing on general average statistics, sure, but in terms of that, like, what does that do for the conversation?
Well, is that aspect of it? So if we agree that men are faster and stronger than women, is that better to be stronger and faster? And I think the answer is in certain tasks, it matters.
Yeah, I mean, like in any given task, you could definitely cite reasons why it may, like if I'm moving, it might be better to have, a man around, if they're stronger, but
Hmm.
that would work for anyone stronger than me. It's gonna, whomever that
Right,
is. Typically,
right,
if it's gonna be men, sure,
right.
but you can all, there are an endless, infinite number of scenarios or situations in which one person might have qualities over another that are better,
Hmm.
and so it's in terms of that, like, I don't think that even the question is one that women have made. It ignores the contributions that have been claimed that men have made, when in reality it may have been a woman, but the name was
Like
given
what?
to a man.
Like what?
And which portion of the question or the comment?
The last thing you said was there were things that have been credited to men that were actually done by women. Give me an example, please.
Yeah. So the one that I was thinking of in terms of that is, I believe, like, in terms of some formulas, and like various, like mathematics, there's been situations that have happened in terms of that. I believe particularly with Einstein, there's examples where, for like with Shakespeare, a number of like plays were attributed under that name. However, it may have been a woman, and that's very common, especially in like arts. Going back, that things were attributed towards men when it was in fact women. We and then like specifically in terms of things like we may know that like a woman has invented it, but like it's so under talked about because we never like acknowledge like women's contribution. Like for example, GPS, which everyone uses today, was originally invented by a woman. It's just things that we just don't talk about, or that get essentially erased in history. And all we talk about are the contributions that men make towards society.
Right. So if women made all these contributions, wouldn't women be talking about them more often?
So women do talk about them, though, is the thing. And like,
Because I mean, you
that's,
haven't given one. You gave GPS as one specific example, not even
well,
citing the name of the woman. But I believe you, right? But you didn't give any other specific example of like this long list of things that women have invented that men took credit
I
for.
mean, but like the very like, would you disagree that that's even realistic to believe?
That that well, it depends on how you're stating it. So this is how I state it. Do you think that the vast majority of inventions have come from men or women?
For inventions, I mean, I can't really say it would probably be men, but again, you have to acknowledge the reality of even if it were from men, what is the reason why that might be? Do you not think that it would have something to do with the fact that women were not able to have jobs? Was it and withheld from doing things like that? They were not able to, have higher education earlier on, that they weren't able to participate in, certain fields.
Yes,
If you're not able to even
up until
participate
50
in the
years
aspect.
ago, up until 50 years ago, I'd say yes, but it's been 50 years. And again, nothing changes overnight, but we don't see more women getting into these roles, even though these roles are available to them now. So again, just going by history up until now, with an understanding that there are mitigating reasons for this, the vast majority of inventions have come from men. The people that build these inventions are, like in construction, 99% men, and and women can be in construction for the most part. There are probably some jobs they can't do, but women generally don't want to be in construction.
Yeah,
You
but
know, do
that's what I'm
poles
saying
and
is when we say something like women don't want to be in construction, when we look at the reality of the situation, a lot of that comes down to the discrimination that will happen in the workplace and has happened and continues to happen. Like, yes, there may be more men in construction, but that part of that is because historically it was not a field that was even available to women. And then now that it is available to women, that doesn't mean that when you go into that field that there's not discrimination. That's the reality, you know? And so it makes it more of a barrier for women to be in. And then on top of that, we also have to look at like things like financial stuff. When there is like such financial disparity among a populace, it is typically put on the woman to stay home with the children. And then where are we getting these opportunities to do the things when that is the society we set up?
interesting point. Jessica, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Sorry I haven't been in earlier. I had a phone call I was on.
That's okay. Luckily, you're not on my payroll, so you don't have to be here. But we've had for the most part, a very interesting conversation. Um, and the points you're bringing up, mine, I think, are valid points. I think that it's interesting that even though things like construction, the military, what else? Things like building tunnels, building waterways, all that kind of stuff have been open to women for a while now. I think, frankly, it's impractical for most women to do these jobs because, again, most of these jobs rely on strength, even though not every aspect of construction relies on strength, but the strength differential between men and women makes these positions reliant on someone being strong most of the time. So, like, I'm okay with the fact that women are not gravitating toward construction, but they could if they wanted to. And I'm sure there's very strong women out there that would be perfectly suited for construction, and they probably still don't want to do that because what women have focused on as the job market has gotten more equitable is the executive type jobs. And again, I don't blame them for doing that. Why would you want to do the shitty jobs? They want the executive jobs.
Well, I do think, in terms of that, like an example of like what you're talking about there, like that comes down to, women having a lot more emphasis on education because it was deprived to women for so much that like having these opportunities is one of the reasons why, for example, like Black women are like categorically the most what's it called? They typically hold the most degrees upon like in any like specific demographic, you know. They just that's just the reality there. And then, like, for example, you talked about like one of the things you brought up in military, and I think that really I think that that's actually the most valid point of what I'm saying. When when what we hear in terms of the military is things like the rampant SA issues that are there that are not dealt with or to any, you know, real standard, you know, that is a consistent problem that would deter women from wanting to be in that particular field. And then more specifically, recently, we have, you know, people like the DoD head saying specifically that they don't want women in the military, you know? And so it makes it an unhospitable field for which women to go into. And so even if women want to, there's still, even today, reasons why it is simply just not feasible. Could you? Sure. But you're going to be faced with barrier upon barrier that has nothing to do with physical strength and everything to do with the culture in which we live.
That's fair. Do you think it's when it's interesting because when women go into the military, the vast majority of them go into administrative roles, not combat roles. And it's unfortunate that the government is not holding people to account for women who are abused in that situation. It's a horrible, horrible thing. And it's a horrible environment to be in for women, which is completely wrong. You know, I think that it's sometimes you have to ask unpopular questions if you're going to be truly intellectually curious, even at the risk of sounding regressive. So here's my regressive sounding question. Is it even practical to have women in the military at this point?
I think so.
I think that there's nothing wrong with having women in the military because while yes, there is a strength requirement on like the boots on the ground people, like we're talking, you know, in terms of that, but like there are definitely women, you know, like it's not like the amount of people in the military is going to be such a significant portion. The people who would be willing to do that are going to be the people up to that level of task. And the biggest barrier I would think would be more of the risk of harm, that not only like in terms of just like you know, SA or anything, but just in terms of the vast variety of issues with, like, you know, the military specifically, but including that, you know, I think just make it a lot less, you know, feasible.
Let
Yeah,
me
I
give you a
would.
you say that
corollary, and then I want to get to Jessica's answer. But um, recently, I talked about the fact that I refuse to be involved in any of these No Kings marches or any other demonstrations. And my reason for it is that YT people created this problem with dump, and YT people need to fix it. So that's me acknowledging that for me and people like me, it's impractical to get involved in something, right? So, with everything that you just described, to my hearing, to my cognitive ability, it sounds impractical for women to be in the military. But Jessica, what do you think?
So I think when posed the question, is it practical to have women in the military? We have to remember, and it's important to take into account how broad that spectrum of just the military is.
Right.
Infantry realistically makes up not a very large portion of the
Right.
military in all of its branches and all of the different jobs that are within it. Women do tend to, in a military role, like you said, be more towards the administration side of things. However, there are vast amounts of jobs otherwise that women are perfectly qualified and capable of doing and do regularly do. And those are very important roles.
Right.
Um, and so I think to say, let's just take women out of the military and in general, that's shorting a lot of those roles of very qualified candidates that could otherwise
True.
be doing those jobs perfectly well.
True. True. And the only reason that I asked that question is because of what mine described. Like, yes, everything you said, Jessica, 100% spot on. However, once you factor in the abuse that women are suffering
Mhm,
in the military, it's like,
mhm,
yes, we have to fix that. That's true. But while it's not fixed,
mhm.
does it even make sense for
So
women to be involved in that?
can I do the correlate it in a different way to you also?
Hmm.
You use the No King's March, which I understand, and I get where you're going with that, because I mean you're right. This is, they did this, they fix it, but I think what would be more equivalent to what you're saying, like the women not being in a place like, for example, the military. I think that would be more like similar to, okay, well, white people did this, so let's not be in government because they did this, they fix it. And as black people, right? But no, if we're not there, then we're not going to advocate for us either. We're not
It's
going
it's
to,
not it's
you
not a
know,
direct correlation, and I'll tell you why. Because the difference between a person of color going to a protest and a person of color applying for a government job, it doesn't carry the same physical risk at all. So it's not
no,
it's
no.
not quite
I,
the corollary that you're making it out to be.
but I mean about like women not being in the military. Is it practical? Like, to me,
Right.
that the in the Congress sense, I think that's more of a correlation than like conversation in terms of, the no Kings protest, like, because that, like you said, it's a different kind of thing altogether. So to say that women, that it might not be practical for them to be in the military would be more synonymous with saying that it's not practical for black people to be in the government that is harming us, versus, like
Yeah.
a
No, I
protest, which is
I
a different
disagree with that
conversation.
correlation. I don't think those are analogous, but that's fair. So Jessica, what do you think?
Um, so I think, like, yes, when there's a lot of abuse towards women that happens in the military, and I think that rather than looking at it from a purely logical standpoint, if you go the route of saying, okay, we're just not going to allow women into the military, you are cutting out a lot of people that would otherwise be very qualified for that job.
Oh yeah, and
You
by the
are
way,
you are
I'm not saying they shouldn't be allowed in,
Yeah, no,
because
I
that would be a complete other implication. I'm just
yeah.
wondering, like, I'm not a woman. I don't know
Mhm,
what it feels like to walk around with that state of vulnerability. I have an idea
mhm,
from being raised in a racist neighborhood, but I don't know, right? So
mhm.
that's why I asked the question: is it practical for a woman to even want to go
Yeah.
in, or to, and I think there's a lot of nuance in that question
Mhm,
and a lot of nuance in the answer. So it's not a plain yes or no kind of thing, but I just have to
mhm.
wonder, like, is the lemon worth the squeeze, basically.
I think that would, and I mean, this is kind of shitty, roundabout answer, but I would say it's almost case by case because, yes, there is a lot of abuse that happens in the military, but also more often than not, that's not going to be reported upon, and women will continue to just like in civilian life. Rarely are abuses reported upon, and then that's a whole other problem and conversation in and of itself. However, that woman will still continue to go on about her life as and live with that trauma, but she will still continue to do her job. She will still continue to provide for her family, and she will still continue forward. And I think that that's awful, that that's how things are, and it shouldn't
Yeah.
be that way. I think that, and when we talk about the practicality of it, Um, I think that it would be more practical, and this is just my opinion, to address the issues within the military that are leading to so many women being abused than it would be to say, hey, it's not practical to have these women here in the first place. I
That makes
think that
sense.
from a purely logical and outside perspective, it would be more practical to fix the issue rather than try to continue to treat the symptoms or just brush it under the rug and make it go away entirely.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's a stronger train of thought than the one that I had on that. Um, yeah, I see that. It's just I think my frustration comes from the fact that all of the conflict is so fucking unnecessary. It's
Mm,
so dumb. Like, and I don't know exactly how to address it because Bill Burr, when he wasn't apologizing for going to Riyadh, had a funny line about like, you know, when you see like a commercial in the middle of the Super Bowl that's like, don't abuse women or whatever. He's like, do you think that there's some
mm.
guy in a tank top like choking out his wife going, "Oh, really? I'm not supposed to be doing this?"